Vanessa. Don't get me wrong, I liked Vanessa in Security Breach, but I also kind of feel like her character suffered from wasted potential somewhat in this story. I wanted to learn more about the complexities of Vanessa. I wanted to learn more about her relationship with Afton and her own sense of purpose here. But instead she ended up as very much a pawn and kind of just like another barricade that you have to deal with in the game. Vanessa claims to want to help Gregory, but she definitely appears to have ulterior motives that are never explicitly stated but seem to be connected to her role as Vanny. We also don't really get to learn if Vanessa is aware of this other persona and is more willing now here, or is just more brainwashed into following Afton. There are so many questions just left unresolved when it comes to her character, and she definitely doesn't appear to be as genuinely interested in helping Gregory as it was implied in some of those trailers. Even the implied connection between her and Gregory seems to have completely been discarded. And it was definitely implied that she was maybe gonna be like his sister or like his mom, and now it's just like, no, she's just a security guard. Alright. Number 9, duffel bags. This just is a curious element of the game that I'm not sure it makes a ton of sense in regards to the story. When it comes to items or messages, we generally retrieve them from duffel bags that can be found throughout the Pizzaplex. But why duffel bags? Like, I understand thematically they look great. They're like these 80s style duffel bags. They look like they belong in the world, but who's leaving them around, and why are there like messages and information and stuff inside them? Who's just putting notes in duffel bags and being like, I'll just leave that there? What is the narrative purpose of these duffel bags? As I said, they're cool. I mean, I definitely want to own one if they made them into merch. Also, if anyone is listening from Steel Wool and, you know, wants to make these into merch, I'll buy them. But I feel like the whole idea of what is inside them is just kind of random. Sort of the same with the music boxes, to be honest, that we find throughout and get prizes from and passes from, especially for carrying important things like passes. Like, why is that in a music box? But even then, I feel like those actually fit better than the duffel bags, narratively speaking. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to talk about, you know, some more of the questionable choices in Security Breach, the mistakes if you will, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Also, I want to talk about some of the great stuff too, because there's a lot of great stuff in this game, so maybe if you thumbs it up, we can do the other part of it.
And at 6, the bunny. The suit that Vanny wears and the suit that she is known for is no doubt inspired by Afton and his love for the bunny animatronic. Probably a little too much love considering how he was shoving Jeremy inside of it in 1985. However, I think that it's pretty obvious that Springtrap and even more so Glitchtrap, because of like the whole suit aesthetic, inspired Vanny's suit as soon as we saw that she had bunny ears in that one promo image from like way back in 2019. Or even when we first saw her mask in Fnaf VR in the Curse of Dreadbear DLC, even though it wasn't really a mask because her mask is a full-on head. But the suit that Vanny wears is also clearly to be a suit, like made in a similar style to Glitchtrap suit, which suggests that William may have made it during one of his like takeovers. The suit is patchy with different materials and fabrics sewn in patches over certain places, like either because they're worn or because there was cuts or rips from her playing with her knife too much. But the stitching all over the body also suggests that it's actually a suit and that she's not just like an animatronic. Either way, making her a rabbit, at least in my opinion, was a mistake. Can we have something else, please? Be original. If you're going to be a serial killer, be original. Okay, get your own thing, damn it. William Afton is absolutely a furry. Halfway through, into number 5, Tarzan. I mentioned before in other videos how the appearance of Monty when he drops off the swinging thing on the ceiling in the trailer is definitely in the game. However, something that I found interesting is that whatever he's swinging on, it should not physically be possible. Like, I get that it's a game and we need to suspend our disbelief, but this game is releasing on the next generation of consoles. Like, I can see Peter Parker running around his room in the reflection of like a kettle or a toaster in Spider-Man PS5, but you can't fix a pendulum swinging through what should be solid concrete on your ceiling, or like even if it's not concrete, just the solid anything. For a game that's dead set on getting its details and its lore correct, so much so that they correct things in other games, you figured that they'd pay attention to something like that. There's not even like a rail system or even like just like the hint of a shadow indicates that it should be able to move forward and back. There's nothing. It's just a solid piece of the roof. Or I don't know, maybe that's the point and this game is all a dream. That would make some sense to me, but I don't want to deal with that because we all know how everyone thinks about dream theory. This is what happens, Scott. You make all these little tiny details, so when you end up forgetting something, we all think that it's a clue. Same with the next point.
Number 8, modern day. While setting Security Breach in the present day was a cool choice, choice that I can totally respect. I'm not sure if it was like the right choice. After all, a lot of what is going on here just feels, I guess, a bit disconnected from the rest of, well, everything that has been established so far. That and there is just so much left that we have yet to resolve when it comes to the past of Five Nights at Freddy's. There's decades of history that is murky and that we've never even got into, and setting this game in the present day has not yet seemed to help clean up or clarify anything that really came before. It's still a bit early when it comes to our deep dive into, you know, all the Easter eggs, the hidden elements, the clues that could relate to the lore and theories that we've already established before. But on the surface, this game being set in the modern day just made it feel a little bit more disconnected overall from the franchise, in my personal humble opinion. What do you think? Was this a mistake for you? Would you want a game set in the past, possibly like in the 80s? Or do you want to just keep moving forward when it comes to the timeline? Number 7, lag. So one of the biggest mistakes in this game seems to be how laggy it is. From a production standpoint, of course, we're talking about. I mean, I understand that you might struggle to play in, you know, like high res, high definition and say, you know, stream Security Breach, because that's going to be hard, not just on your system or your console, but also on your internet. But even when you just play this game, like offline, it seems to have moments where it struggles a bit. It's lagging. Lag is just never fun. And yes, I know it's often inevitable in games that are giant like this one. At least, I mean, it feels somewhat inevitable. I don't think I've ever played a giant game that hasn't lagged somewhere. But that doesn't mean that any of us, developers or players alike, need to like lag. So you know what? I still don't like it. Number 6, I can't go-kart! You all know how excited I was to have Roxy Raceway and to have this potential to just race go-karts around everywhere. Not only did Roxanne Wolf turn out to be kind of disappointing as an animatronic, considering, you know, how narcissistic she is, at least when we first meet her, even though initially I was actually excited for her character, but also her Raceway doesn't really allow us to unlock and race go-karts. There's no intense racing minigames here. Sure, there is a sequence where you need to stop Roxanne herself using a go-kart, but we did not get any options to actually have a fun time racing on the Raceway. Also, it might just be me, but I was kind of hoping for either like an actual go-kart, like time-lapse minigame within the track itself, or, you know, some kind of Mario Kart FNAF amalgamation minigame that we could play as, I don't know, an arcade game in the Pizzaplex. Actually, I think there is one in Roxanne's room, but I've never tried to play that, so I don't know if that actually works. Does that work? I don't know. How sad. Instead, when it comes to any kind of racing in the game, it's all about the main objectives, defeating Roxy, capturing those eyes. And you know, I'm for that too, but I also just kind of wanted to have fun and feel the wind in my hair, or at least, you know, imagine the wind in my hair. Number 5, crashes. As with many new games as well, Security Breach is not immune to crashing or giving you just a completely black screen. However, as much as this is a glitch or error in Security Breach, it's also a pretty common error for you to encounter with new games in general. So it's no surprise that tons of people have reported this being an issue or a glitch. One of the more problematic spots for this on PC seems to be when you move into the daycare area, and happens as a result of possibly GPU issues and certain things just not being fully up to date in your system. Don't worry though, a lot of these frustrating, scary crashes already have a whole articles dedicated to helping you move past them and fix them. Number 4, sidekick Vanny. Vanny was implied from everything we saw to be an ally of Afton's, and I mean, she was, but I think there was a good number of fans, myself included, that were kind of hoping she'd ultimately be the one to take over for William, and that this game would kind of be like a passing of the torch, as MatPat has said before. That isn't really what we got here. Not only that, but as a sidekick character, Vanny just didn't really get to do that much. Sure, she was still the key to getting William to, you know, return to life once more, but I feel like she had a lot more potential to be or become more of a mastermind herself, and even become more powerful. Part of me thought that Afton would somehow imbue her with power, or like even maybe take over Vanny, giving him a new, more lively form, as he's pretty much like a shambling corpse. Instead, it felt like we just got a lot of the same old same when it came to who our main villain was, and how weird and kinda unclear his overall plot was here. Why does Afton even want to return to life, by the way? Number 3, mismatched subtitles. If you, like me, love to play with the subtitles on so you can just read everything instead of just relying on your ears, you might at times be disappointed in Security Breach. Why? Well, because the dialogue that is being said doesn't always match the subtitles that you're seemingly given. Sometimes this appears to just be like a conflicting error where repeated NPC lines just aren't synced with the subtitles, which means a line you've probably heard a dozen times or will hear a dozen times is still being said, but an alternate, often repeated line is being shown instead in the subtitles. So it's like just a conflict of repeating lines getting mismatched. However, sometimes these mismatches are just kind of creepy. Like when Chica is meant to say that your parents are looking for you in regards to what the subtitles read, but instead she just kind of like gutturally growls, "Gregory." Wait a minute, Chica, I heard you. It's not what you said. Number 2, unable to save. Sometimes this seems like it might be a glitch when it happens before 6 a.m., but after 6 a.m. it's definitely like a choice that you make. It's not a glitch then. If you choose to stay in the Pizzaplex and not leave after having that initial chance to escape, you have to be a lot more careful as you can no longer save. You can't use those save stations that you could use before. This was obviously a choice in order to help, raise the stakes when it came to your death as Gregory in the game. Anytime you get caught or you seemingly die, you now have to start all the way back from the last checkpoint with no option of you getting to choose when to save your progress. For those who dislike having to run through segments of a game possibly on a loop when struggling, this is likely a nightmare. For gamers, however, who enjoy this kind of play style and maybe enjoy some sense of punishment, they like when it punishes them a bit, a game, this probably isn't that bad. Still, there are lots of people out there looking to get around this part of the game by exploiting glitches, so obviously there are enough people out there who are not a huge fan of this style of gameplay. So people are looking for ways to get around it, or simply they just find it annoying and they're like, this is fine, but not all the time because I'm gonna play this game a lot. Obviously we're all gonna play this game a lot because we're gonna be looking for like every little detail. Number 1, deleted scenes? I don't know why I said it like that, but are they deleted scenes? What happened? Based on what we saw in the trailers and teasers for Security Breach, a lot of the moments and scenes we were most hyped about there seem to have gotten the axe, which is really unfortunate considering, those are some of the moments that we were most hyped for. I know I, for one, was eager to figure out why we were running from Vanessa when it seemed like she might be trying to help us. I was interested in learning more about the relationship between the split personalities of Vanny and Vanessa, and I wanted to know just what William Afton wanted and why did he want it and who was helping him. It sounded like there was multiple people, and how do we as Gregory fit into that? Instead, we got more of like a wrong place, wrong time scenario when it came to our story. At least that's how it appears on the surface.
And it ain't Music Man Spider. Music Man is already creepy as hell, okay? He feels like that uncle that's just sitting around. Whenever you show up to like a family gathering or event, he's just there. He's eating the finger sandwiches in the corner. He's just like staring you down. He chills behind you in Ultimate Custom Night. And then just like your old neighbors, he tells you to keep the racket down, resulting in a jump scare if you make or cause too much noise. But here comes FNAF 9 with some goddamn hallucination, arachnophobia, f***ing looking because Music Man has like 6 legs now and is gigantic and got like crawling out of a sewer. That got real creepy real fast. Considering how I'm arachnophobic and I already hated this guy. But to those who are arachnophobic and robophobic, which is the fear of robots, they're going to find these sections of the game absolutely unplayable. While yes, this guy is in Security Breach, I'm putting him on this list because I don't want him to be. I feel like it's a mistake to include this character. This is going to cause me to security breach my pants. And 7 reveals. We don't know much about Security Breach. We know that it's planned on being a hide-and-seek style game and that the main villain will be Vanny and that a couple new animatronics will be introduced along with a new location, the Mega Pizzaplex. But other than that, we don't really know anything. We now know that there are seemingly 2 ways to play the game, surviving until 6 a.m. and following the story. However, that's it. We don't know anything else. And some of the things that we do know are now put into question, which I'll talk about later. But honestly, if this game was any other game series, we wouldn't be excited for this game. If this game series wasn't my job at this point, there would be nothing to really talk about. But since this series is so popular, they can get away with giving us so little information. Like, think about it. What do we really know about what's going on in this game, or going to be in this game? Do we know anything about the story? No. We have speculation and theories. And that's where the mistakes come in. Because if this was literally any other game, no one would care. But because it's FNAF, everyone is excited. So I'm just saying they should have been giving us more. And at 10, Cassidy. Assuming for the scenario that Cassidy is the one you should not have killed, this was one of the dumbest things that William could have done. Or maybe he doesn't consider it a mistake, since the one you should not have killed after all is keeping him alive. They're doing it as a way to make him suffer though, so since it's potentially a mistake but could be considered a good thing depending on the angle, I'm going with the top spot for this one. Well, the first spot for this one. But even if he does consider that a good thing or an absolute win, or if Cassidy doesn't end up being the one you should not have killed, killing those 5 kids that made up the missing children's incident that most likely ended with Cassidy was a mistake, since it causes basically everything else in his life to go downhill, and he does end up suffering extremely only because of that kill and the others. So if you don't want to count Cassidy as the mistake, count the missing children's incident as the mistake. And at 9, Charlotte. While yes, Charlotte may have been Afton's first true kill, causing his descent into madness, this is more so because of what she turns into. In the games, Charlotte ends up possessing the puppet, who then gives life to the other animatronics, which causes you to disassemble them and release their spirits, and then scare you into your spring bodysuit that crushes you, and then starts your descent into further madness. But even discounting the game aspects of killing her being a mistake, in both universes where William kills Charlotte, Henry comes after him for it, which results in what should be his death multiple times over. And not to mention how in the book specifically, unbeknownst to her, Charlie is an animatronic robot that was meant to replace Henry's daughter, and it's also revealed that the animatronic is also the baby animatronic that we know and love, who can switch between her forms at will. So yeah, in the books, Charlotte is also baby, who is also Elizabeth Afton. And at 8, the fun times. There's no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state of the art. There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand. We were hoping you could shed some light on those. She can dance, she can sing, she's equipped with the built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips, she can take song requests, she can even dispense ice cream. With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton. This classic line of Afton being interrogated that plays the first time you open Sister Location is definitely showcasing this idiotic mistake. The cops know what these animatronics are capable of and were designed to do, so they instantly end up being even more suspicious of William and are going to be keeping a closer eye on him. Probably why he ends up dressing up in the spring bodysuit to start killing, which ultimately screws him over. So yeah, designing the fun times as killbots was definitely a bad idea. And at 7, Henry. Why did you think that killing Charlotte wouldn't have any consequences? Like, you killed your business partner's daughter, that's gonna be pretty obvious to him, especially when he already suspected you were up to something, so he took extra care to protect his daughter, and she still died. That's a vengeful father if I have ever heard of one, and he hasn't even needed vengeance yet. So then, you know, he's after you, or seems like it, and you don't kill him next? Killing Henry could have done wonders for your criminal career. I mean, like, yeah, the cops are already suspicious, but as long as they can't find a body, you'll be clear again. If they won't put you away for 5 missing kids, they won't put you away for a missing father as well. Especially a jury who has to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that you are a killer. And without a body, there's no real forensic evidence. And again, they didn't put you away for the missing kids, so you just finally off Henry and then you'd be able to stase yourself or even a spring trap, alright? And then you don't get burned like 3 separate times, and Michael would still be alive. And at 6, hiding spot. How the absolute living hell did he not end up, like, how did he get away with this? How did he not get caught? The smell of rotting bodies would ruin the hell out of the actual atmosphere of the pizza place because, you know, you're supposed to be trying to eat pizza. And the heat from the animatronics, like the robotic parts of their body, would help to speed up the decomposition of the missing kids. And the animatronics are in front of all those other kids every single day. There's even reports about people complaining that the animatronics started leaking blood, mucus, and other bodily fluids, as well as, quote, smelling like death. If this was real life and William getting away with this wasn't important for the plot or the story of the overall games, he would have been caught for that instantly. Like, oh, we never found the bodies of these kids that went missing at this pizza place, but now the animatronics at this pizza place are leaking blood and smell like death. They also sound like their bones are being crushed when they move. So maybe we should check these out. Let's get a warrant. Oh, look, turns out we found those missing kids. William Afton, you're under arrest for the murder of Gabriel, Susie, Jeremy, Cassidy, and Fritz. Boom. Oh, then they could probably throw on Charlie and a couple others on there, I'm sure. Like, boom, instantly, he gets caught. I don't get how this wasn't an open and shut case. Like, William is so goddamn stupid that he shouldn't have made it to the events of the first game. Like, not even 1987, or not even 1985, alright? It shouldn't have happened. His whole plan is a dumpster fire of bad ideas. Halfway through into number 5, Elizabeth. Speaking of mistakes, let's talk about his daughter. What about getting your own kid killed? That's what I mean. Like, I don't know how William thought that this was a good idea. Like, I feel like this guy just thought, like, how do I capture kids more efficiently? Oh, I know, I can make a robot to lure them in and then grab them when they're close. But like, what would its design be? Hey honey, come here, daddy wants some design tips. And then Elizabeth ends up making the most predictable move ever and going directly against her father's instructions to see the robot that's basically perfect in her eyes. Like, William, why did you think that this was ever going to end well? Like, what did you think was going to happen? When has a kid ever listened to a parent? Especially at that age, when they're seemingly also loaded because you own a successful entertainment business. Spoiled rich kids listening to their dad when they say not to touch a giant robot made to appeal to them specifically. Yeah, genius idea, man. God, you're a real special kind of stupid, William, aren't you? Like, program a blacklist of kids not to steal, right? You have facial recognition tech, so come on. Just make a blacklist, like, don't kill my kids. Easy. God. And at 4, crying child. I've had a ton of people complain to me about how Crying Child's death wasn't William's fault, since he didn't put Crying Child in Fredbear's mouth, and the spring locks failing were because he was crying. However, to me, there is no logical way that the animatronic jaw should have been able to crush his skull, okay? The spring locks were already active. Crushing his skull would require a lot of power to actually accomplish with just a normal opening and closing of an animatronic mouth. So the only way that Crying Child's skull could have been crushed was if Afton had intentionally supercharged the animatronic, which would make sense if he wanted to use it as a kill machine or a backup kill suit maybe if Springtrap or Spring Bonnie ever ended up shutting down. Figuring more power would help him out, which clearly it did, just in the worst way possible. There is no way that this was a spring lock failure either, okay? The Fredbear suit was already in animatronic mode, meaning that the spring lock mechanisms used to keep the robot parts to the side of the suit so that someone could be in the suit weren't being used. The spring lock failure problem comes from when those mechanisms are put under the stress of keeping the parts away from the person in the suit. If it's in robot mode, the spring locks can't fail because they're not being used. Keep in mind that the term spring lock in this context is referring to the actual parts that move the robot bits away inside the suit, rather than just the suit as a whole, which is also referred to as a spring lock. Well, it's referred to as a spring lock suit, okay? If I was talking about the suit, I would say spring lock suit. Getting close to the end in at number 3, Princess Quest. The whole reason Princess Quest is a thing in Security Breach was to lock Vanny away and prevent her from regaining control of her body. So why did William create or allow for the creation of a sort of fail-safe that would let her escape? I mean, sure, they didn't expect a kid to come along and figure it out, maybe, but given the track record of this series, you'd think that Afton would have smartened up after at least 40 years. But that's like having a self-destruct button on a bomb that you plan to use to wipe out the entire city, but you still want no one to stop you. Or like if the Flash had a steal my speed button on his suit that you could just like tap. It's just stupid. Like, if you want something to work, why give it away to fail, you know? This is one of the dumbest things that William has done, and probably the 3rd dumbest thing overall. And I'll talk about the most dumb in a couple minutes, but seriously, what's the point behind a way to undo your evil plans? One of the absolute most ridiculous things in this story. Like, I get it, so that we can save her and have a good ending, but that ending isn't even canon, so we could have done without it. It's one of the dumbest things known to man at this point. Like, William has the brain capacity of a toddler. Penultimately, in at number 2, Springtrap. Being the genius behind some of the most advanced robotic technology in his universe, we expect a lot from William Afton. He's the suit technician, but he's also the main killer, so he should really know what he's doing, right? No. Apparently not, since after discovering that the original 5 animatronics were possessed, he disassembled them to learn their secrets. This inadvertently released the spirits of his original 5 victims, however, causing William to panic, which is fairly reasonable since, firstly, they're freaking ghost kids, and also because they're ghost kids that he killed. So this absolute animatronic genius, the technician that handles the suit maintenance and has explained to every employee the proper procedure for the spring lock suits, including the spring body suit that he uses to kill, ends up climbing inside the suit in a panic, in an attempt to make himself feel more powerful and maybe to scare the ghost kids off. However, since he's so smart, he didn't notice the moisture of the room, the leaking ceiling, ceiling, which ended up causing the spring locks that were active at this moment, since it was in suit mode, to fail, which would have killed him had he not been possessed by the one you should not have killed. Ironic. And finally, in at number 1, location. The biggest mistake William has ever made, and I will stand by this till the day I die, was the fact that he killed people in his establishment. Okay, it's unknown if this was always his intention, but come on, who the absolute hell thinks that this is a good idea? Who in the comments wants to justify killing your prime demographic in your place of business? Dealers don't kill their best customers, right? Because it's bad for business. So why would William think it's a good idea? Literally, go anywhere else. This is like basically killing someone in your house. Okay, it's putting unwanted and unneeded scrutiny on everything you do. You even end up getting banned from going back in there while the investigation is underway. And it's not like it helped your business. You had to close the first location, resulting in you having to open another location called Circus Babies that ended up killing your daughter. So I think that this mistake is the one that caused every other mistake in the series. All you had to do was kill someone at the park. If you killed someone at the park instead, your kids would be alive. You'd be harder to suspect, and then you'd also be rich from your business. And that's why William is a dumbass. And in 10, Family Ties. The first couple of trailers for Security Breach featured a lot of Vanny talking. However, she was talking to our player character Gregory, saying things in such a way that indicates that she has some form of involvement with him, be it as a sister or even as a mother, since she says things like, let's get you home and put you to sleep, instead of let's get you home so you can go to sleep. It's small things like this that indicate that somehow Vanny would have a link to Gregory. However, in recent trailers, they've abandoned this idea seemingly, making no effort to reference their relationship or explain it further. This bothers me because I don't want to have to be worrying about goddamn familial relationships in this game while I'm trying to figure out the lore before anyone else does, because no matter what I come up with, someone in the comments says that I'm not the first to think of it, unless it's totally outlandish and everyone hates it. And at 9, Hidden Images. The first ever Security Breach trailer featured a shot of Gregory standing in front of broken security cameras, showing the classic no signal static. However, there seemed to be faint images still able to show through those frames, but it was impossible to really tell. Trust me, I tried. But the biggest mistake in this case wasn't something the trailer did, but rather something they didn't do. They had the coolest opportunity to drop some wicked Easter eggs on us by using those static screens to show faded stills from old security cameras, as an homage to where the series started, but instead they just made it look like a load of static for no reason. They knew damn well we'd be coming over every single frame of that trailer, but did they throw us a bone? No. Probably because if they had, we would have taken that bone and ran with it until there was no way the game could meet our expectations. We'd think it was like gonna be this, like some Heart Gold, Soul Silver Pokemon thing where we get to explore previous regions as well. But that obviously would not be the case. But we still would have done it though, even if it was obvious that it wasn't where it's going.
Number 10, Balloon Boy. Fnaf has taken some flack for inconsistencies in the game, and while some can be attributed to story being the reason for variations in character depiction, or simply a trick of the light when it comes to some of the details, not all can be reasonably explained, or can have a case made in terms of them being intentional. The inconsistency of the color of Balloon Boy's buttons is one mistake that many fans think was not intentional, but simply something overlooked and not finalized. Balloon Boy's buttons originally appear white when he first appears in FNAF number 2, but later appear to change to black, even when you shine the flashlight on him. This has led people to theorize that there are actually 2 Balloon Boys simply because of this small overlooked inconsistency in his design. What do you think? Was this a mistake or was it intentional? Number 9. Where's Chica's cupcake? While Chica has become known for her cupcake, which she's often pictured as taking around everywhere with her in the games, this has left many fans of the franchise wondering where it was in the first game. Now, in that game, Chica is still wearing her Let's Eat bib, but she doesn't really have any cupcake snack to come along with her. She's not holding that cupcake on a plate. Because I think FNAF blew up in a way that Scott was really not expecting. There have been many inconsistencies with characters' props like this in the game. And because there is so much story and lore surrounding the events of the game, a lot of people are looking for more of an explanation than just, well, it hadn't been designed yet, or it was simply forgotten. Number 8, Five Nights at Freddy's High School. Okay, so sadly I was not able to track down the official cartoon for this thing to watch, but apparently there is an animated series based off of the animatronic characters from Fnaf. What? If this does exist and it isn't a joke, it looks ridiculous because the show is actually supposed to imagine what the lives of the animatronics would be like if they were human and in high school. Yeah, because that's something we needed apparently. The description reads, Golden has no control over his life, Fox has made mistakes, Chica has no friends, Bonnie is constantly bullied, and Freddy has a secret. Say what? Someone trying to turn the world of FNAF into a high school drama series? But why? Why does everything have to become a high school drama now? And although I wasn't able to find this animated series, in the process of trying to track it down, I actually stumbled upon several different animations from various studios that explored the world of teenage drama with the animatronics being in high school. Like, what? This whole idea seems to be a huge mistake. I hope this never becomes some sort of official like Cartoon Network show because I don't think I'm ready for that. I'm cool with like a scary cartoon with FNAF, but not like high school drama. So much drama. Number 7, Night 8. A weird glitch in the game allows you to play through an 8th night in FNAF 2, and possibly also in the original FNAF game as well. Apparently, when you scroll through the starting menu following completion of the game can glitch, which will allow you to play Night 8 out of the 5 nights. I know, I was surprised too when I first discovered there was actually more than just 5 nights in this game. The name is a bit of a misnomer there. Yes, even the first and original FNAF game, you play 5 nights, and then you can continue onto the hard mode, Night 6, and then you get to play a custom night where you can actually change the level of difficulty for the AIs of the animatronics that you will face. Now, glitching out the game in FNAF 2 reveals Night 8, though whether or not this was a mistake or an intentional glitch remains a mystery. Some people think that it was actually something that was being worked on but wasn't finished yet, though most people just believe this is a straight up glitch, especially because Night 8 doesn't seem to have anything super standout about it. Number 6, fan art. After promotional artwork for FNAF 7 was released on social media, it was almost immediately taken back down. Fortunately, fans still got to see the artwork released as it had already made its way to Reddit, where it was preserved. Why had it been taken down? Well, apparently Scott had removed the artwork because he had discovered that the person on his team who had created it hadn't just used his own artwork and models for the game, but had accidentally used fan art mixed in with Scott's own work. Because of this, he immediately took it down, not wanting to use someone else's work and lay claim to it, and was understandably upset that this had happened. So, how did this happen? Well, apparently it was because the fan-made models that his team had found were actually so close to the original skins of the characters from the game that they thought they were actually Scott's own designs. Following this mistake, Scott actually commended those who had made the fan art for doing such amazing work and made it mistaken for his own. He even admitted that some of the fan-made models that he'd seen were even better than his own models. Although we've seen some other moments that showcase this, Scott's reaction continued to highlight just how much he cares and respects the fan base of FNAF and its community. So although this was a mistake, it was still kind of like a really nice mistake. Definitely made people, I think, realize how much Scott cares about his fan base. Number 5, continuity. For many, a lot of the story that is explored and hinted at in the games has become somewhat hard to follow or understand, more filled with theories than having something concrete that we can hold on to. While many have praised the games for the story that begins to unravel the more and more you play, involving murder and family drama, there have also been some continuity errors within the lore. The only thing that can be said about retcons being introduced in regards to the storytelling is at least Scott recognizes that not everything that he will make is perfect, but he has reassured the community that he does spend time putting effort and thought into this story, while also admitting that he is bound to make mistakes on his journey. I mean, aren't we all? Number 4, FNAF film script. That's right, Five Nights at Freddy's has become so popular, there is a movie in the works. I mean, we all knew it was going to happen eventually, right? This movie was originally supposed to be produced by Warner Brothers, but then moved over to Blumhouse Entertainment when it came to the studio that was going to be taking care of it. Known for their hand in the creation of such horror films as Insidious, Paranormal Activity, The Purge, Split, and Get Out. This film has been in talks since 2015, and in 2018 a script was finally provided, one that Scott had actually worked on, that both Jason Blum and the director for the film, Chris Columbus, had both apparently liked. I mean, obviously they liked it so much they approved it. Unfortunately, Scott scrapped the script following its approval. Taking to the forums, he updated the fans on the status of the film, sharing that he had liked the script, but that he actually got a better idea for it, and so he decided to scrap the original script. So instead of pre-production getting underway in 2018, it's likely that we'll have to wait at least another 2 to 3 years for this film, if we even end up getting one. As far as I know, we have yet to hear about anything but a new script being approved, so da-da-da. Number 3. Jump scares and nightmares. While designing and developing the game Five Nights at Freddy's, the creator Scott Cawthon found himself startled by one of the animatronics in the game when he lowered his camera and its face popped up. The animatronic wasn't where it was supposed to be due to a game glitch, which startled Scott, and he was actually scared so bad he had nightmares. But this glitch would go on to be one that would pave the way for the feel of the games, as it actually inspired Scott and made him realize that he could actually have something very, very special on his hands when it came to FNAF. Boy, was he right, it took off. Without him experiencing this unexpected glitch and jump scare, who knows if the game would actually be the same. Sometimes mistakes shape us. Number 2. Five Nights at Freddy's World. When Five Nights at Freddy's World was originally released a month early, fans rushed to play it. For Scott, this had been an exciting project that he had been working on, which was different from most of his other games in terms of style. While most FNAF games are more survival horror, this was more of like an open world RPG. However, although loyal fans seemed to enjoy the game once it was released, eager to express their love for it, critics felt just the opposite about it. The reviews from critics were actually so poor that Cawthon felt the only way to deal with the criticism was simply to take it in. He removed the game from Steam and offered a refund to everyone who had played it, whether or not they enjoyed it. Then he set out to fix the game that he felt may have been a little too rushed, even for him. Scott Cawthon does have a thing with rushing his games. He just gets really excited and wants to get them out there pronto. Five Nights at Freddy's World was later re-released. After being patched up and because of his prior mistake in rushing development, Scott offered it for free to all who wanted to play. However, because of mistakes made super early on in the development process, Scott inevitably realized the game was kind of unfixable, and he was actually forced to scrap it and move on. This was a huge thing when it happened. Number 1. Chipper and Sons Lumber Co. Scott's inspiration for FNAF actually came out of one of his biggest failings. Before he became famous for creating Five Nights at Freddy's, indie game designer Scott Cawthon was someone who constantly found himself criticized for rushing through his game development. And it was this kind of criticism that he faced from video game critic Jim Sterling, surrounding a trailer for one of his games, Chipper and Sons Lumber Co. Jim made fun of the game, using his review to spin a far-fetched narrative for the game involving a post-apocalyptic world where humans had been replaced by robots. Now, Scott decided to embrace this criticism and actually set out to build a game based on the outlandish narrative Jim thought he was posing, which would later become the first Five Nights at Freddy's. So without that mistake, or without him failing initially, we wouldn't even have FNAF today. And in fact, it was his approach to fast development that helped in building the franchise, as fans have enjoyed how Scott often manages to release new games ahead of their intended release dates. So while for some people that might be a downside, for a lot of the fans, they love that about the game.
In at 4, Misdirect. The Freddy and Friends cartoon was meant to be the way that the release date for Security Breach was revealed, or at least that's what we thought, until another State of Play trailer event released a new trailer for the game that gave us the official release date, making the other 2 episodes obsolete, if they were ever planned. Now, there are 2 ways that this could be a mistake. One, if they just got the timing wrong and they were supposed to start releasing episodes 2 weeks early, or if this was their plan all along, I would also consider that a mistake. As someone who went to college for advertising, I do know a couple things, contrary to popular belief, and honestly, if they had 6 episodes that slowly revealed the date, but then the last one got corrupted and then the actual trailer revealed the full date, that would have been much better in my opinion. It would have been much stronger. The hype for the release date would have been building longer, and the State of Play trailer wouldn't have just come out of the blue. So I think that this was indeed an actual mistake, and that they were supposed to be releasing the other 2 episodes earlier, ending on the week that the State of Play trailer event happened. But someone screwed the pooch. The giant, face-eating, possessed animatronic pooch. Getting close to the end in number 3, mini arenas. Now, I don't know what the hell those tiny little things were at the end of the latest Security Breach trailer, but they were one hell of a mistake in my head. Like, what? The whole point of the mini arenas was that they were Bellora's children, but Bellora has been dealt with, and that was a whole thing that should have been like 10 years in the past or something like that, okay? So what's the deal? The mini arenas, even if they are nightmare versions, have no place in this game, especially if they're nightmares in fact. So like, what the absolute living hell? Why must you do this to me, Scott? Stop torturing me with these goddamn additional animatronics! Also love you. Penultimately, in at number 2, the arm. Now, while there seemed to be nothing wrong with the actual arm, the main mistake they made was never mentioning it again, or even anywhere close to referencing it, which to me is one hell of a mistake, because if you forget, the arm was like the one thing that everyone was freaking out about at the end of the very first trailer. And then they didn't include it in any trailer afterwards, and especially because those were actual gameplay footage, which makes me think that it's not really going to be in the game. It makes it seem like it was intended to build hype, but not actually be in the game, which makes me think that it's going to be a mistake. If Vanny is actually meant to be trying to save William, or I guess resurrect him, shouldn't there be more of an allusion to that in the trailers? Because this is a pretty big thing that needs to be handled at some point. I guess like they could be omitting it for surprise purposes, but I'd rather know something like that is going to be in the game rather than be surprised. I don't know, maybe I'm just spoiled, or maybe I want an actual answer from Scott for once, but either way, it was a mistake. Finally, and in number 1, story. There seems to be a lot of conflicting data and points in the FNAF series as a whole, yes, but also in the trailers. Like how in the trailer, Vanny seemingly tells us to come home and that it won't happen again, which is a whole other can of worms, like I said, that suggests that Vanny is Gregory's mother, but I talked about that earlier. But that line also suggests that Gregory ran away from the Pizzaplex, but in recent trailers we learn that Gregory gets trapped in there accidentally. And in the RTX trailer we hear Vanny say, "Gregory, it's getting late, let's get home and put you to bed." But we know that he's only there late as an accident, so what's the deal here? And even in the first gameplay trailer we hear Vanessa say that she can get us out of this place, but then we learn from Freddy that the doors don't open until 6. She also says that we won't want to be here at 6 AM, but that seemingly is the only time that we can actually get out of the doors. So is this hinting that the 12 AM to 6 AM classic gameplay version is going to lead to a bad ending? Maybe, but even so, why are the trailers contradicting themselves before the game even releases? This is usually something that happens 3 games after a game's release, okay? Like FNAF 4 was conflicting with like everything else, wasn't it? So yeah, what the hell, Scott? I have no idea. And in 10, Elizabeth. Speaking of mistakes, what about your kid? I'm kidding. What about getting your own kid killed? Yeah, like I don't know how William thought that this was a good idea. Like, I feel like this guy just thought, how do I capture kids more efficiently? Oh, I know, I can make a robot to lure them in and then grab them when they're close, but what will its design be? Hey honey, come here, daddy wants some design tips. Yeah, and then Elizabeth ends up making the most predictable move ever and going directly against her father's instructions to see a robot that's basically perfect in her eyes. Like, bro, William, dude, why did you think this was ever going to end well? Why did you think that this wasn't going to happen? When has a kid ever listened to a parent, especially at that age when they're seemingly loaded because you own a successful entertainment business, okay? Spoiled rich kids listening to their dad when they say not to touch a giant robot made to appeal to them specifically? Yeah, it's a freaking genius idea. Flawless, okay? God, you're a real special kind of stupid, man. Or like, maybe at least program a blacklist of kids not to steal. Like you have facial recognition tech. So come on, dude. In at 9, hiding spot. How the absolute living hell did anyone end up getting away with this? The smell of rotting bodies inside of animatronics would ruin the place, especially when you're meant to eat there. The heat from the animatronics insides would actually speed up decomposition, and the animatronics are in front of people every single day. They even started complaining that the animatronics were leaking blood and mucus, and as well as, quote, smelling like death. If this was real life and William getting away with this wasn't important for the plot of the games, he would have been caught for that instantly, okay? Like, oh, we never found the bodies of these kids, but now these animatronics are leaking blood and smell like dead bodies. They even kind of make bone-crushing sounds when they move around. We should probably check this out. Oh, look, we found the missing kids. Afton, you're under arrest. Boom! Instantly. Like, I don't know how this wasn't an open and shut case. Straight up. William is so goddamn stupid that he shouldn't have made it to the first game. Okay, his plan is a whole dumpster fire of bad ideas. Actually, you know what? No, dumpster fires are actually better than this. Because fire. And at 8, the Bite of 87. The Bite of 87 is one of the most mysterious moments in the entire FNAF series, and it was introduced in the very first game. Being introduced in the series in FNAF 1 from 2014, the Bite of 87 has remained one of the most debated points in FNAF history, and we can't quite agree on what happened. At first we thought that Golden Freddy caused the bite, then we thought Freddy, then we thought Mangle, then Fredbear, then Toy Chica, and then back to Mangle, and everyone in between. Everyone has their different opinion on the subject, but for some reason most people think that it's confirmed, or that the Bite of 83 from FNAF 4 is the Bite of 87, which it isn't. If you Google Bite of 87 on Google Images, you actually get pictures of the bite from FNAF 4, which actually takes place in 1983. In fact, I'm sure you're seeing pictures of the incident now. The Bite of 87 and 83 have been confused for ages, and they're still being confused to this day. Honestly, it's kind of frightening, based on how many people get mad at me because I go against something that MapPad said, but then also tell me that I'm wrong about the Bite of 83, even though I agree with MapPad on that point. Okay, just because Markiplier asked if it was the Bite of 87 doesn't mean that it is, okay? It's not. It's a mistake. For you, at least, changed everything. That's right, I'm getting sassy today. It's on you. And it's 7 lives. One thing that I think would have changed everything is if FNAF had a life system. Sure, you can go back and do it again after you fail night 5 thanks to the continue button, but I think that lives would have made this game worse rather than better. Part of the appeal is that you only have one shot, and while yes it saves what night you're on, you still need to restart everything, and I think that lives would take away from that. Even though it's basically the same thing, unless maybe the lives would let you continue the night that you were on, like from where you got jump scared. Like if you got jump scared at 5 AM, you'd still be at 5 AM, which I feel would kind of break the game. Especially if you use the glitch where you can continue the jump scare for a long time by just moving the mouse and like reopening the camera. But it also still continues the night. But, okay, yeah. With the system it has, lives are kind of redundant, but we know that this was a planned feature thanks to gameplay that was left on Scott's YouTube channel from the development days of the first FNAF game. Either way, personally, I think that adding lives would have been a mistake and changed how FNAF would have played out, and it honestly might not have been as popular as it ended up becoming. And its 6th timeline. Trying to think about a FNAF timeline is probably one of the worst decisions you can ever make. The FNAF timeline is not for the faint of heart, and honestly, if it wasn't my job at this point to think about it, I wouldn't even have touched the damn thing. Before we started FNAF videos, do you think I was just sitting at home thinking about the timeline? Hell no! I just trusted what MapPad said. And honestly, I know that's what a lot of you do as well, but there are some things in his FNAF theories that I would question, but since it wasn't my job to care, I really didn't, and it didn't make my life any worse. So trust me, if you aren't getting paid to talk about FNAF, or aren't trying to make a career by talking about FNAF, and it's convoluted what-if story timeline, don't bother, okay? It can be fun to speculate, but don't invest a lot of time and energy into it, because honestly it will have no benefits. Hell, it has no benefits for me, and I've been doing it for 2 years. Spend that time playing games with your friends, or even by yourself. Hell, even make a D&D campaign based on FNAF if you want to. I was thinking about something like that, but like, you could just do it as a way to have fun with people who share your passion, okay? But don't worry about the timeline. Trust me. All it brings you is pain and suffering, crying endlessly, although that could also be my daddy issues. Halfway through at number 5, Immobile Freddy. The original FNAF that Scott had in mind is not at all like the one he actually released. Well, it is in a sense that it's what he wanted to make, but so many ideas and mechanics were added and changed that while we know FNAF as a point-and-click game that gets progressively harder, adding more animatronics later on in a playthrough, that wasn't actually what Scott had planned for at the beginning. In a statement on Reddit, probably. Scott revealed that he originally had plans to make Freddy only jump scare you if you ran out of power, and that he actually never wanted Freddy to leave the main stage. Eventually this changed, and we'll never really know why. Perhaps it was because the game was too easy, or maybe he wanted to see how things would go with two animatronics in the same hallway, or maybe he just wanted to see how it would go with Freddy. Or perhaps he had Freddy moving around but he got jump scared randomly and just kept it in. Or he just wanted to torture us more, like the sadistic fool that we all know him to be. Why do you do this to us, Scott? Why? I'm kidding, please put me in the movie. In at 4, Alivened. While Henry might have had issues killing Afton for whatever reason, he seems to be just fine offing his son when he gets the chance. And by his son, I mean Afton's son. And by he, I mean Henry Emily. Okay, I mean, and like in both of the fires set by Henry that we see, FNAF 3 and FNAF 6, Michael was there both times, and he didn't seem to care that Michael was in the building. He doesn't even give Michael the opportunity to exit the building in FNAF 6, despite there having been a way out planned. Quote from Henry's final speech, "And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling you are right where you want to be." He assumes that we also want to die in these halls and doesn't give us the chance to actually make the decision for ourselves. So he just forces us to die since he doesn't really give us a way out. So sorry man, but that's murder. Whether we wanted it or not, assisted suicide is still illegal, at least for the majority of states from my understanding. So either way, this is a crime. But again, he doesn't give us the option, making it more of a murder than an assisted self-offing. All the Henry stands are gonna be mad at me, but it's true, okay? He didn't even give us a choice. He just assumed that we wanted death, and he was like, okay, I'll give it to you, but getting close to the end in number 3, Neglect. Now this might be a controversial topic. I mean, this may also make a few Henry stans mad, but you know what, it needs to be said. If you're suspicious of your business partner and concerned for your daughter's well-being, you don't just give her a special bracelet that makes her a priority to the one security bot you have, especially when that bot can be disabled by simply placing a couple of boxes on top of it. You keep her home as much as you can, and not in a controlling way, but in like a protective way. Like you keep an eye on her, okay? You let her play around in the backyard, you play with her, you do stuff as a family, okay? And you should be doing that anyway, because, you know, she's like 3 years old. You don't give her a bracelet then let her run amongst the big kids at a pizza place where she then gets locked outside and then killed. Bro, no. How did she even get locked outside? How is that possible? How could that even happen? Neglect. This man put a green bracelet on his 3-year-old daughter and said that's enough, and then neglected her, hoping the green would be enough. Bro, what the hell? Especially when the man you think is going to hurt her is the one who built the goddamn animatronics in the first place. And then also knows exactly how to disable it when the time comes. The worst thing that Henry has done was straight up get his daughter killed. He suspected William and then didn't report it to the cops. Maybe he could at least get a conspiracy to commit charge, and then he thinks that a bracelet is gonna keep his daughter safe thanks to an animatronic that William had designed. It was Afton Robotics after all. Holy crap, you can't fight me on that. You know I'm right, alright? She was running amongst the big kids looking hella sus. But ultimately in at number 2, Crying Child. I've had a ton of people complain to me about how Crying Child's death wasn't William's fault, since he didn't put Crying Child in Fredbear's mouth and the spring locks failing was because he was crying. However, to me, there is no logical way that an animatronic jaw would have crushed his skull. The spring locks weren't actually active because the spring locks are used to move the robotic parts to the side, and Fredbear was actually in animatronic mode, meaning that they weren't needed. And crushing a skull would require a lot of power to actually accomplish with just, like, an opening and closing mechanism. So the only way that Crying Child's skull could have been crushed was if Afton had intentionally supercharged the animatronic, which would make sense if he wanted to use it as a kill machine, or maybe even a backup kill suit, figuring that more power would help him. which clearly it did, just in the worst way possible. There is no way that this was a spring lock failure, okay? It was an accident and it was a mistake, but the Fredbear suit was already in animatronic mode, meaning the spring lock mechanisms used to keep the robot parts to the side so that someone could be in the suit weren't being used. The spring lock failure problem comes from when those mechanisms are put under stress, under the stress of keeping the parts away from the person in the suit. If it's in robot mode, the spring locks can't fail because they're not being used. Keep in mind the term spring lock in this context is referring to the parts that move the robotic bits away instead of the actual suit, which is also referred to as a spring lock. But either way, Michael putting crying child in the mouth was meant to be a joke, but it ended up being a mistake that changed everything. And finally, in at number 1, playing. Probably the biggest mistake you can make in FNAF history, and the one I tend to try to avoid, is actually playing the games. Think about it. If you don't play FNAF, you don't have to worry about the jump scares or the stress at all. You can just sit there and watch other people scream on your behalf. And isn't that the dream? And not even like the dream theory, just the dream. It's probably the biggest mistake that you can make, and it's just because you decided to boot up the game. I've only played FNAF VR a handful of times, and then I've played Security Breach all the way through. And while I do suffer at the hands of Freddy Fazbear and Scott Cawthon, that's not due to me playing the game. That's because of you people and your unwillingness to click on literally any other kind of video that we release. I'm joking, but I'm also not joking. Can you, for God's sakes, please click on some of the other videos for once? Please, we have to make a whole other channel to talk about Minecraft. Like, come on. Or if we play something else that's like a new, like the new open world horror spider train fighting simulator or whatever it is, Choo Choo Charles or something. Could you watch that? Okay, it's exhausting talking about FNAF every day, man. Like, I love the series, kind of, don't get me wrong, but like, talking about it every day, especially with people yelling at me because I suggested that crying child is the one you should not have killed, and that's not what MapPad says, like, bro. We've made over 500 FNAF videos at this point. I'm not even kidding. Check the FNAF playlist. And while we may not have as many subscribers as other FNAF channels, I think I have at least as much knowledge, okay? We've talked about around 5,000 FNAF related points, give or take a few hundred, but like, come on.
Cut me some slack.
And at 10, Balloon Boy. FNAF has taken some flack for inconsistencies in the games in the past, and while some can be attributed to the story just being convoluted and, you know, variations in character depiction or, you know, simply maybe a trick of the light sometimes when it comes to that kind of detail, not all can be reasonably explained or have a case made for them for being intentional, because you know what, the goddamn spring trap makes no sense, okay? Spring, then scrap, then burn, what's going on? The inconsistency of Balloon Boy's colored buttons, however, is just, it's one mistake that many fans think was not intentional, but simply something that was overlooked and not really considered. Balloon Boy's buttons originally appear white when he first appears in FNAF 2, but later on appear to change to black every time when you shine the flashlight on him. This has led fans to theorize that there are actually 2 Balloon Boys simply because of the color of his buttons. What do you think? Was it a mistake, or are there actually 2 Balloon Boys? It was a mistake, okay? It's a mistake. And at 9, where's Chica's cupcake? Well, Chica has become known for her cupcake, which she's often pictured with, because, you know, it's Chica and her cupcake. Baby loves her cake. This has left many fans of the franchise wondering where it was in the first game. In that game, Chica is still wearing her Let's Eat bib, but without any actual cupcake to come along with her. Probably because FNAF blew up in a way that Scott wasn't expecting, so of course there's going to be inconsistencies when he has to change things up because he made the next game in 87 days. Especially because it's just a prop. And because so much of the story is not surrounding the events of the actual cupcake itself, I think it's kind of okay, because it's just a goddamn cupcake. But again, people just, they think crazy things. A lot of people are looking for more of an explanation than just it hadn't been designed yet. But oh well. Maybe this version of Chica just simply didn't have a cupcake like we seemingly see with the glam rock version of the character, okay? It's entirely possible. However, there does seem to be a monument to the cupcake outside of her green rooms So, I mean, she's not using it, so maybe that's what's happening in this one, okay? We don't see the entire pizzeria. Maybe it's just chilling out in the kitchen. You never know. In at 8, FNAF High School. Okay, so sadly, I don't actually think it's sadly. I think it's probably a blessing. I wasn't able to actually track down the cartoon to watch, but apparently there's an animated series based off of the actual like animatronic characters from FNAF. Like what? I don't know if this actually does exist or if it's just the joke, but either way it looks ridiculous. The show is supposed to imagine what the lives of the animatronics would be if they were human and in high school. Don't know why. The description reads, quote, Golden has no control over his life, Fox has made mistakes, Chica has no friends, Bonnie is constantly bullied, and Freddy has a secret. What? Someone tried to turn the world of FNAF into a high school drama series? I'm sorry, but you can never be winging it. Why? Why does everything have to be turned into a high school drama? And although I was unable to locate the actual animated series, maybe this is supposed to be referencing the Ultimate Custom Night animatronic teenage, like the high school thing, because like Chica's high school thing, you know, the high school years of Chica, maybe that's what this is referencing. I don't know. The whole idea just seems to be a huge mistake, and it changed how I looked at the series. Just please don't let this be real. In at 7, Night 8. A weird glitch in the game actually allows you to play through an 8th night in FNAF 2, and possibly also in the original FNAF game as well, although I'm not trying it. Apparently, when you scroll through the starting menu following the completion of the game can actually glitch and allow you to play an 8th night out of the 5 nights. Now, I was surprised when I first discovered this. I was surprised when I first discovered that there was more than 5 nights. I mean, the game is literally called Five Nights at Freddy's, and apparently there's more than 5 nights. But I don't know if this 8th night is actually a glitch or if it's intentional. I feel like it's a glitch because the 7th night is always the custom night, right? But yeah, even in the original FNAF game, you can actually play the 5 nights, then continue on to the 6th night, and then you get the, again, custom 7th night, where you can change the difficulty of the animatronics. But, like, apparently you can glitch out FNAF 2 and get Night 8. I don't know, okay? Though whether or not this was a mistake or, like, intentional remains a mystery, but most people believe that it's just a glitch. And you know what? It changes everything? At 6, fan art. After promotional artwork for FNAF 7 was released on social media, it was almost immediately taken back down. Fortunately, fans still got to see the artwork released because it made its way onto Reddit, because, you know, it's always on Reddit. But why was it taken down? Scott didn't realize that he wasn't really the person who created it. He didn't just use his own artwork and models, okay, when he was actually like constructing this, but he accidentally mixed fan models and fan art into the actual cover as well. And because of this, he immediately took it down, not wanting to use someone else's work. And understandably, he was upset about it. But like, again, how did this happen? Like, you're literally the creator of the series. How do you mess up and not use an original thing? Apparently, it was because the models that his team found were so close to the originals of the characters that they actually thought that it was Scott's. Following this mistake, Scott himself actually commended those who made the fan art because they did such an amazing job that it was mistaken for his own. But yeah, he even admitted that some of the fan-made models were better than his. And although we've seen some other moments that showcase this, Scott's reaction continues to highlight just how much he cares and respects the fan base of FNAF and its community and just how good you are at making fan art. Okay, that's all we're gonna say on the subject because I could already hear the comments. I'm sorry, we're working on it. Halfway through in at number 5, continuity. For many, a lot of the story that is explored and hinted at in the games has become somewhat hard to follow or hard to understand, understandably so. More filled with theories than having anything actually confirmed. So yeah, the whole story is just theories, really. And while many have praised the games for this kind of story that begins to unravel the more you play, involving murder and family drama, there has also been some continuity errors within the lore. The only thing that can be said about retcons being introduced in regards to the storytelling is that at least Scott recognizes that not everything can be perfect, but has reassured the community that he only made one retcon, at least at the time of that Reddit post. Since then, I'm sure he's made more, okay? And just because he doesn't say it doesn't mean that it didn't happen, okay? We had a whole list of the top 10 FNAF retcons. Alright, go watch that one, because it's true. There's more than one, I'm telling you. In it for the end of FNAF. Did you know that FNAF almost ended? Well, if you've watched this channel enough, you should know that. So if you don't, be sure you hit subscribe and turn notifications on. Anyway, the original ending of FNAF, according to Scott himself during an interview with Daco, was an ending that we all originally thought. Yes, FNAF 3 was supposed to be the end of the series, despite Scott leaving Springtrap in the background of the final newspaper image, because of course he would. That's why we released the spirits of the missing children. That's why the place burns down. That's why it feels like the end, because it was supposed to be. But why did we get another 6 games after? Well, simple, because the Springtrap jump scare wasn't scary enough. That's right, Springtrap's jump scare was so mild that it was basically ketchup, and it caused fans to get upset, especially for what felt like the end of the series. So Scott came back, and he came back hard, making FNAF 4 and the Nightmare animatronics, and then he just kept it going from there. So yes, Springtrap's jump scare was a mistake, because without it, I might actually be able to get some sleep at night without thinking about what animatronics may be under my bed. Hopefully, it's Chica. Hey, mommy! Into 3 jump scares and nightmares. While designing and developing the Five Nights at Freddy's series, Scott Cawthon found himself startled by one of the animatronics in the game when he lowered his camera and their face popped up. And I guess you all know what it was, okay? The animatronic actually wasn't supposed to be there due to a game glitch that startled Scott, and he was scared so bad that he actually ended up having nightmares. But this glitch would go on to be one that would pave the way for the feel of the games, and it inspired Scott and made him realize that he could have something very special on his hands when it came to FNAF. Haha, that's right. And without him experiencing the unexpected Bonnie jump scare, of course it's Bonnie, who knows what the game would have been. Although Freddy also wasn't supposed to be moving, and he did. So this could be in relation to that as well. He didn't really specify, but we all know that he was scared of Bonnie. But he also, Freddy wasn't supposed to move. He was supposed to stay on the stage, but then he started moving. So that could be a glitch, or that could just be an urban legend that Scott made to make us all fear the series more. But ultimately, in at number 2, FNAF World. That's it. That's the number. FNAF World was a mistake. We don't talk about it. All right, moving on. Just kidding. When FNAF World was originally released a month early, fans rushed to play it, okay? For Scott, this had been an exciting project that he had been working on for a while, which was different from most of his other games, at least in the FNAF series. However, although loyal fans seemed to enjoy the game, eager to express their love for it, critics and the general populace just felt the opposite. The reviews from critics were actually so poor that Scott felt that the only way to deal with the criticism was to take it down. He removed the game from Steam and then offered a refund to everyone who had played it, whether or not they enjoyed it. He then set out to fix the game, and it kind of did, okay? It was a little bit too rushed even for him, even for a man who made a game in 87 days. The game was later re-released on Game Jolt after being patched, and it was also released for free. However, because of the mistakes made early on, nobody really played it after that. I mean, I played it on the channel and I still don't understand it. I don't know how it works. Okay, Scott inevitably realized that the game was unfixable and was forced to scrap it and move on, but you can still play it. You can still play it, we just don't talk about it anymore. That's it, we don't talk about it. And finally, in at number 1, Chipper and Sons Lumber Co. Scott's inspiration for the game, actually for like the FNAF series, actually came out being one of his biggest fails. Before he became famous for creating FNAF, Scott Cawthon was someone who constantly found himself criticized for rushing through his game development. And it was this kind of criticism that he faced from video game critic Jim Sterling surrounding a trailer for one of his games, Chipper and Sons Lumber Company. Jim made fun of the game, using his review to spin a far-fetched narrative for the game involving a post-apocalyptic world where humans had been replaced by robots, describing the characters in the game as animatronic-like. Scott had decided to embrace the criticism and actually set out to build a game based on this outlandish narrative. Jim's criticism ended up later becoming the first Five Nights at Freddy's game. So, without that mistake, or without that fail, we wouldn't have FNAF today. And you know what? I think that might be better for my mental health. But you know what? I don't talk about it. And at 10, forgetting Foxy. I'm pretty sure the Foxy mechanic was added to help prevent the player from just keeping their screen down the whole night, since you can't really be jump scared if you don't bring up the tablet with the cameras unless you're looking at the wrong side of the office. So Foxy is a way to ensure that you have to look at the cameras to hold him back, otherwise it's guaranteed that you're going to be jump scared. However, forgetting about Foxy and not checking Pirate's Cove is a horrible idea, even if unintentional. My personal strategy is to put the camera on Pirate's Cove whenever I'm closing the tablet, just to ensure that the next time I open it, Foxy gets his dose of eyes on him. So just like Peanut, you know, the SCP, he will stay in place. And that just makes sure that I don't forget about him, because my reaction time is not fast enough to stop him from getting into the office. And at 9, music box. The music box is in essence FNAF 2's equivalent to Foxy, having to keep the music box wound on a specific camera to ensure the puppet doesn't do that really creepy walk thing to jump at your face. The puppet also isn't fooled by a mask, making me think that it would instead get launched at you in the original FNAF 2, but who knows. The VR version of FNAF 2 though is much easier, with you just needing to hold down the button like Eddie VR does when he played through the game. He just held it down and used his other hand. But either way, forgetting to wind the music box is a big mistake. In FNAF 1, all you need to do was look at Foxy, but in FNAF 2, you have to go to the camera and then intentionally wind it, and it's certainly something else. It's another layer that you need to be aware of. At least you get a little warning when the music box is running low though. I think that this makes the strategy of leaving the camera on the prize counter when you close it a good idea as well, since at that point, even if it's really close, you don't need to spend time trying to freak out and like look for the actual camera before you get sprung. It's just up there, so you can just rewind it real quick. In at 8, speedrunning. Trying to speedrun something like FNAF is actually impossible, with each individual night having a set amount of time that you need to get through to actually survive. Around 42 seconds per hour if memory serves. However, there are certain aspects of the game that you can try and speedrun, particularly in FNAF VR and the additions like the Curse of Dreadbear Halloween DLC. Games like The Hallway, Build a Dreadbear, Corn Maze, and a couple others can actually be speedrun in a sense, since these aren't reliant on surviving until 6 AM. These are reliant on completing a set of tasks, like collecting a key and leaving a maze, or completing a brain for an animatronic. These kinds of things can be speedrun, however it's still not a good idea. Trying to speedrun something like the Corn Maze will absolutely result in a failure or a jump scare, since Foxy always knows where you are, and the only way to actually avoid him is to hide behind cardboard cutouts. But these cutouts are only in specific places, meaning you need to camp one and then wait for him to see you in order to be the most effective. But ultimately, it's just a bad idea and you should avoid it. And at 7, timeline. Trying to think about a FNAF timeline is probably one of the worst mistakes or decisions that you can ever make. The FNAF timeline is not for the faint of heart, and honestly, if it wasn't my job at this point to think about it, I wouldn't even have touched the damn thing. Before we started making FNAF videos, do you think I was just sitting at home thinking about the timeline? No, I just trusted what MapPad said. And honestly, that's what I'm sure a lot of you do as well. There are some things in his FNAF theories that I would question, but since it wasn't my job to care, I really didn't. And it didn't make my life any worse, so trust me, if you aren't getting paid to talk about FNAF, or aren't trying to make a career by talking about FNAF and its convoluted what-if story timeline, don't bother. It can be fun to speculate, but don't invest a lot of time and energy into it because it will honestly have no benefits. Spend that time playing games with yourself or with your friends. Hell, even make like a D&D campaign based on FNAF. I mean, like, I was thinking about doing something like that for my own channel, but you could just use it as a way to have fun with the people who share your passion. But don't worry about the timeline though, okay? Trust me, all it brings is pain. And at 6, panicking. Panicking when playing a FNAF game is bound to happen. It's happened to me the first time I played, and it happened to me the first time I played FNAF VR on the channel. Ah, what a video. However, what you really need to focus on is staying cool and calm and collected. Remembering that the animatronics can't actually hurt you and that panicking is only going to result in what you fear actually happening. If you're freaking out because you can't find Bonnie, you're not going to find Bonnie. Especially because he might be like in the back in like a shadow or something really hard to see and you're just flipping through trying to find him. Plus, panicking results in you closing doors to make sure that you don't get jump scared, and then that only makes you lose power faster, which ends up resulting in you getting jump scared because you're in pitch black. Panicking is the worst thing that you can do in any real horror scenario, so why would you do the same thing in a fake horror scenario unless you needed to do so for plot reasons, like you're in a movie. Exactly. So chill the F out, okay, and honk Freddy's nose a couple times to calm your nerves. Halfway through in at number 5, looking behind you. In FNAF VR, you have a whole range of motion for yourself. You can turn your head wherever you want, whenever you want, you can move up and down as you please, but honestly, none of that is going to do anything for you. Hiding underneath the desk, like what would be realistic for this scenario, is only going to result in you getting jump scared. Because the game only relies on the buttons you're pressing and the locations of the animatronics for information, rather than the location of the actual player. Plus, nothing ever really interesting is behind you, so looking behind you while you're in the middle of night Night 5 of FNAF 3 isn't really going to help anyone other than Springtrap, so clear your mind, focus, and get me those pictures of Spider-Man! But no, honestly, don't waste your time looking behind you. You could end up missing vital information, like someone going into a vent, or someone now being at your door. Just keep your eyes on where the action can be and focus on what is actually going on rather than looking for Easter eggs. Easter eggs are usually within that area anyway, aside from maybe helping in FNAF 2's filing cabinets, but still. In it for thinking logically. The FNAF world doesn't contain logic. I've said this once and I'll say it a million times. I will die on this hill every single time. The logical answer when it comes to what's going on in the FNAF universe is usually the incorrect answer. The door should close without power. Incorrect. The animatronics shouldn't actually be able to be possessed, especially by an emotion. Incorrect. The freaking door shouldn't be able to close without power. Incorrect. The only thing that really makes sense is how the light works. Just, that's it. Other than that, you just throw everything you know out the window. If you don't end up thinking logically, you'll be fine. Oh, this would be the most likely moment to attack? Nope, they'll do it when you're most aware. But now that you're thinking that a logical thinking is logical, it suddenly becomes illogical. It's an infinite loop and a paradox. That's what FNAF really is, a lie. One big lie that will never be solved. But you keep clicking on these damn videos, so I'll continue to talk about it. Can you see how this video is starting to break me? Getting close to the end, and at number 3, not listening. Sound is such a vital part of FNAF. So many different aspects of the game actually rely on sound, especially in FNAF 4, 5, and 6. FNAF 4 requires you to listen to the doors before opening them to know what side they're coming down. In FNAF 5, you needed to know where Ballora is and where Funtime Foxy is in their respective areas. And in FNAF 6, you need to listen for the scrapped animatronics to make sure that you don't get jump scared while you're busy working on getting that sweet, sweet lore, bro. But ignoring the sound will result in ultimate failure. I used to play the game without sound. The game would actually be physically muted because I was playing it on the school bus or in class for research, something like that. And yes, it was actual research because one of my projects in grade 9 was based on FNAF. Either way, not having sound certainly makes the game not scary, but it also makes the game much more difficult because I couldn't even hear if Chica was in the kitchen. So I'd have that door closed a lot more than normal just because I was trying to find Chica, which would also result in me running out of power. Look, I wasn't a risk taker at the time, in FNAF, life, or with girls, but now I am a risk taker in FNAF. But ultimately, in a number 2, too much door. Going along with the whole not listening thing, using your doors too much will result in death every single time, even if the doors make no goddamn sense. The doors use the absolute most power in the original FNAF, making you run down very quickly, around 1% every 5 seconds or so, at least from memory. And using it in combination with other things like the lights or the cameras only makes it worse. Much worse, in fact. Especially if you're using everything at once, which is just stupid. The doors should only be used when the characters are at your blind spots, which makes the game very risky since they can at points skip that spot if you're on the cameras. So if you adopt the strat of using the lights before checking the camera, you could be in for a save. However, there's a lot more to factor in rather than just those individuals. The Freddy Files doesn't even really help with this kind of thing. I mean, maybe I should make a video called playing FNAF the way Scott Cawthon intended or something, and see how far I can get just based on the strategies from the Freddy Files Updated Edition. But then again, like I said, I'm not a risk taker. Wait, no, I said I am a risk taker now. Damn it! Finally, in at number 1, playing. Probably the biggest mistake that you can make in FNAF history, and the one I tend to try and avoid, is actually playing the game. Just think about it. If you don't play FNAF, then you don't have to worry about the jump scares or the stress at all, or hell, even the timeline. You can just sit there and watch other people scream on your behalf. And isn't that everyone's dream? And it's not even just a dream theory, it's just a dream. It's probably the biggest mistake you can make, and it's just because you decided to boot up the game. I've only played FNAF VR a handful of times, and while I do still suffer at the hands of Freddy Fazbear and Scott Cawthon, that's not due to me playing the game. That's because of you people and your unwillingness to click on literally any other kind of video we release. I'm joking, but I'm also not joking. So can you for God's sakes just click on some of the Minecraft videos for once? Or if we play something else, like that new open world horror spider train fighting simulator or whatever it is. Could you watch that one too? Cause I've been wanting to play that. It's exhausting talking about FNAF every day, man. I love the series, don't get me wrong, but every day? especially with people yelling at me because I suggest that like Crying Child is the one that you should not have killed, and that's not what MatPat says. Like, bro, we've made over 300 FNAF videos at this point. While we may not have as many subscribers as the big FNAF channels, I think we have at least as much knowledge, okay? We have talked about around 3,000 FNAF related points. Assuming those were all top 10s. I mean, they weren't, but like we've talked about roughly 3,000 FNAF related points. I think. And 10 character names. The names of various characters over the years have remained mysterious. Sometimes they don't have a name, other times it's an alias like the purple guy, or other times they're just random names decided by the community. However, in all of these instances they don't end up actually being canon, and something I noticed a lot of in the comments is the misuse of names that have either no origin or very weak origins and believing them to be canon. One of the best examples of this is the Crying Child and Mrs. Afton. Crying Child currently has 2 names that are being used, Evan and Chris. Neither of them are canon, and only one of them is actually a theory, and not even a strong theory at that. So far they've only been able to find E, V, and A, and not the N in any solid fashion. And the whole Clara Afton thing is just very outlandish to me. Just because there's a name doesn't mean it belongs to anyone. Does that mean that Crying Child's name is Vlad because the purple character in that soap opera was named Vlad, or is that William's new name? Like, come on. And at 9, Mic Trap. The Mic Trap versus Wool Trap debate, at least in our comment section, seems to be over. At least until this video goes out and people are gonna spark it up again to troll. However, the debate over who is in the Springtrap suit is still heavily debated on Reddit and other comment sections, thanks to the final scene from Sister Location that involved the final speech from Michael and the reappearance of Springtrap, confirming some theories about him surviving the fire. However, the appearance of Springtrap accompanied by the line of "I'm going to come find you" left some people thinking that Michael was the one in the Springtrap suit instead of William, also leading to the conclusion that Michael was Purple Guy instead of William. Which is wrong, as confirmed by Scott when he said to check MatPat's explanation on the subject, which resulted in the conclusion that Michael had no way of being the Purple Guy and thusly being Springtrap. However, the introduction of Scrap Trap reignited the debate, and I'm not too sure if it's been put to bed at this time. And given that Scott will be relinquishing ownership after Security Breach, I don't know if we'll be getting another Reddit post about it. Although, Mic Trap for Springtrap is absolutely not canon. It was confirmed to be not canon, so stop. And at 8, Bite of 87. The Bite of 87 is one of the most mysterious moments in the entire FNAF series, and it was introduced in the first game. Being introduced in the series in FNAF 1 from 2014, the Bite of 87 has remained one of the most debated points in FNAF history, and we can't quite agree on what happened. At first we thought it was Golden Freddy who caused the bite, then Freddy, then Mangle, then Fredbear, then Toy Chica, then back to Mangle, and everyone has their different opinion on the subject, but for some reason most people think that it's confirmed that the Bite of 83 from FNAF 4 is the Bite of 87, which it isn't. If you Google Bite of 87 on Google Images, you get pictures of the Bite of FNAF 4, which is in 1983. I'm sure you're seeing pictures of this incident right now even. The Bite of 87 and 83 have been confused for ages, and they're still being confused to this day. Honestly, it's kind of frightening based on how many people get mad at me because I go against something MatPat said, but then also tell me that I'm wrong about the Bite of 83, even though I agree with MatPat on that point. That 83 is not 87. Also, the calendar doesn't agree with that. 83 is not 87. Can confirm. And at 7, FNAF 4. FNAF 4 is such a controversial point in the FNAF timeline, and I know I say that every time. But even now I see that it's more controversial than I thought. See, there's a debate within the FNAF community about whether FNAF 4's main gameplay is a dream or real life, and there are arguments for both sides. I personally believe that it's still a dream rather than real life, since the sound discs that cause you to hallucinate were not introduced into the games until Sister Location, and the Ultimate Custom Night dialogue supports this. However, assuming one way or the other is not very useful when trying to discern a timeline. I do realize this as I'm saying it, so from now on, if I can remember at least, I'll be doing my best to include points to support my theory from both sides of it, meaning that like if it's also like points for if it's a dream and points for if it's not a dream. Although I'm curious to hear your ideas. Do you think FNAF 4 is a dream or is it real life? And why? Be sure you let me know down below. And at 6, fan games. There have been multiple instances of people in the comments using points or story elements from FNAF fan games to try to prove my theories wrong. For example, a YouTube user commented on another video saying that Vanny's mask appears in the FNAF fan game called Aftermath. So my statement that her mask appears in the DLC to a game that's meant to look back on the past tragedies of the franchise and that could mean she's from the past is false, even though Aftermath is a FNAF fan game and has no canonicity in the main series, which I don't understand because like why would you use a fan game to try to prove me wrong? Not a video that has nothing to do with that Vanny theory, no less. Someone else even commented on yet another video where I included fan characters for context since the main series didn't have 10, where they said fan games don't count since they're non-canon and are in a different universe, which was trying to be a dig at me for using fan characters, but I mean like there aren't 10 Springlock victims in the main series, in the books or the games combined. But this only supports my point that you can't use fan games as evidence for a theory, but you can use them on a list if need be, alright? Halfway through in at number 5, assumptions. As the great Slade Wilson once said, assumption is the mother of all failures. Well, okay, well he said it while punching a guy, so it was a little more exasperated than that, but still, the point still stands. Assuming makes an ass out of you and me, they say. However, this hasn't stopped fans from assuming more than one thing about the series. Not everything is connected. Not everything makes sense. And assuming that one thing is correct when it is in fact just a theory makes things more difficult for everyone. We need to have a realistic mindset when it comes to FNAF, and a load of assumptions are made on a regular basis. Especially with the other points I've been bringing up today, most of these are because of assumptions, and I'll be honest, I'm guilty of it too. It's human nature, but honestly, it's seeping into the comment section as well, and people are getting very mad and very mean. It's coming into my DMs too. Since with every theory I make, someone comes up with evidence that is supposed to disprove me, but it relies on a theory or some fact that has never been added to the canon information. And they're only that, theories or some idea rather than actual evidence. While yes, a diamond is the only thing that can cut a diamond, a theory can't disprove another theory. It just doesn't make sense. And at 4, Dead Afton. William Afton didn't die in the spring locking incident that we see in FNAF 3's 8-bit minigames, okay? He didn't. I know there are still plenty of people who think he died, but he didn't. MapHat even said it himself, since the majority of people saying this are also the ones who say that I'm wrong because MapHat said blank. He said in one of his FNAF 3 or FNAF 4 theory video, timeline video, something like that, to note that you don't see William die in the suit. You see him convulsing because of being spring locked, and then he starts twitching. But he never stops moving. He doesn't actually fully freeze, I guess. And thanks to the man in room 1280, we know that William was being kept alive by the spirit of one of his victims that the book calls Andrew, but the games call the one you should not have killed. And we know that these are meant to help fill in blanks from the past, thanks to a Reddit post from Scott from 2020 saying, quote, "Let me at least say this, future games will look forward, but look to the novels to fill in some blanks to the past." So this book single-handedly gives us a reason as to how William survived all these years rather than Remnant. The one that you should not have killed possessed him. I have been saying this since we started talking about FNAF on the channel, and everyone was mad at me for it. They're like, oh no, there's no way he could have survived for 30 years. And I'm like, bro, it's FNAF. Do you really need to like, what? But I was right, and people are still mad at me because I suggested. But he didn't die in the suit, okay? God! I can hear the comments already saying, yes he did, just to troll me. Stop it! Why are you trolling me on the internet? I'm just doing my job. Getting close to the end in number 3, Mrs. Afton death. The story of Mrs. Afton, if there even is one, is a mystery we've been debating for ages. A story that hasn't even had a slight amount of explanation. No references, no mention of a name, nothing. So naturally, there are theories. However, these theories have no actual base in game, like lore-wise, and instead focus on FNAF fan animated music videos and stories that are treated as canon, and sometimes heavily so. The truth is, and I'm sorry to break this to you, but we have no idea what happened to Mrs. Afton. Currently, we don't even know if there really was a Mrs. Afton, if it was just the baby mama, or if William ended up having a surrogate so that he could have children of his own. Hell, his kids may just be adopted like Courtney and Jackson from The Tempest by Julie Cross, except without the whole time travel thing. Yes, I'm plugging that book because it's my favorite book. Either way, for some reason, and I don't know what video really caused this to pick up, a load of people think that Mrs. Afton died in a car accident. I mean, like, it's a possibility, but that doesn't mean that it's canon. There are also others that think that William killed her, or that she just left him because she found out what he was into, but then for some reason also left behind his prime demographic. Others think that her leaving is the reason he started killing, and some people believe that she died in a plane crash. All are equally possible, but nothing is actually canon. And also, there's no proof that she is possessing Ballora, or that her name is Clara. But ultimately, in number 2, origins. Going along with the whole we don't know anything about Mrs. Afton thing, we also don't really know why William Afton decided to start killing, and more particularly, start killing kids. He could have just be your good old run-of-the-mill psycho, but some people assume that it's because his kids died. However, that is literally impossible, since his kids died as a direct result of him wanting to kill kids. Since Elizabeth died thanks to getting scooped by a baby that was specifically designed for that purpose, and Crying Child died after Elizabeth, and as a result of an animatronic with a little too much bark in that bite. Since, like I've been saying, there are no spring locks that could have failed in that mouth, since it was already in suit mode, so all the spring locks had been released. Spring locks being released is what causes a spring lock failure, so if they can't be released, they can't fail. So his children died as a direct result of him wanting to kill kids. It could have been that his wife or baby mama or whatever left him, but we can't know that for sure, and the truth is we have really nothing to go off of as for reasons as to why William started killing, because it wasn't because of possession or because of his kids, because he only finds out about that later, and his kids died because he wanted to kill others. I don't know, maybe a Fazbear Frights books will let us know. Hopefully. Please. Finally, in at number 1, singular mindset. The biggest mistake that we can make when talking about FNAF lore is having a singular mindset. One way of viewing things and then completely disregarding something if it doesn't align with those beliefs. I mean, the same remains true for life, however it's especially a problem with FNAF. I get it, okay? MatPat was here first and you've been theorizing with him for years. But the thing is, and he says it himself, that's just a theory. And that doesn't discount other theories from being possible and even right. MatPat and others have been wrong before. So when I or anyone else suggests something that's against the grain, it's still possible. Like in the case of Crying Child being the one you should not have killed. I am 100% convinced that I am right on that. I provided solid evidence and reasoning, but for some reason people seem to disregard it because it's not normal, it's against the grain, it's not what MatPat said. I even see comments that say, but MatPat said this, so you're wrong, or no, you're wrong because MatPat said that. And my point to that is literally, it's just a theory. He says it at the end of every video, every single time, for this reason. Open your brain to new possibilities, bruh, because it's the only way we'll actually get answers. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. So if we keep using the same theories over and over and expect to solve something new, it's not gonna happen. Just open your mind.